Matthew Tkachuk chirps at the Lightning at the end of the series, and the Panthers are set to play the Toronto Maple Leafs for the second time in the last 3 years.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, May 2nd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News, and you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at @LO_FLA Panthers, and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. If you are on the YouTube, make sure to subscribe and press that like button down below. Shout out to the everydayers who come back here and get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire Stick TV 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to amazon.com/firetv-locked-on to learn more. So, Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show for another edition to discuss everything in the world of the Florida Panthers. And it didn't take long for the Panthers to get to know who their opponent will be in the second round, as the Panthers will be playing the Leafs in round number 2. We're going to discuss a little bit of the series in segments 2 and 3. We are also going to put a little bit of a bow on the Battle of Florida that just ended last night. But here to discuss that and more on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. It's a Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Nick is right back from the IR. So, Nick, welcome back, my friend.
Glad to be back, and glad to be here on an exciting Fairbanks Friday, because guess what? We want Florida.
There we go. Great way to. I knew you were wearing that shirt for a reason. For those who are listening on podcast, Nick is wearing the 2023 Stanley Cup Final run that the Florida Panthers went on. Just of all the opponents the Panthers went through in their quest to make the Stanley Cup Final before eventually losing to Vegas. But I want to give the floor to you, Nick, on just because we did have Rod Peterson sit in for you last Friday for game 2 of the Battle of Florida. But I just want to give you I want to give you a little bit of have you provide the audience with your thoughts on just overall the series between the Florida Panthers and the Tampa Bay Lightning, where the Florida Panthers were able to win in 5 games in a result that a lot of us did not expect.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there, where I think a lot of us had Florida in 6 or 7. Don't tell ESPN that, though, because I think they had like 20 out of 26 of their experts take the Lightning. And I think it was Mark Messier that took them in 4. So I don't know what he was doing. Maybe he was too busy elbowing people in the head, or maybe he got elbowed to the head. I don't know what happened to him. But anyways, I don't think this series really gave us everything that we wanted. We like to view the Tampa Bay Lightning as the Florida Panthers' main rival. I don't know if I can really say that right now. The last 2 postseason runs, last year, it was really no match whatsoever. I felt like Florida outplayed them the whole time. This one, it seemed a little bit closer to me, but at the same time, just Tampa doesn't have that physical element, and they don't have a way of being able to push back against what Florida was doing to them. So it's not really a huge surprise that it was 5 games, but you would think that after losing last year in 5, that Tampa would come back and try to prove something, or at least put up a bigger fight. And unfortunately, that wasn't the case.
Yeah. Although I predicted the Panthers last year and this year in their series against Tampa, I was actually less confident in my pick this year, to be quite honest with you, just because of all the offseason stuff that Tampa went through before last season's series, and then they looked so rejuvenated, which, I mean, the replacement for Steven Stamkos was actually the one to show up the most in the series, in Jake Guentzel for him. So one thing that was in common, like a little bit of a compare and contrast, was the stars for the Tampa Bay Lightning not show up. And you spoke about rivalry, whether it is a rivalry or not. Matthew Tkachuk spoke about, I don't know if it's really a rivalry, but as far as the Panthers' biggest rival, it's TBD for me because I want to see how the Boston Bruins respond after a top 5 pick and if they are able to respond after a coaching change as well. So I want to see if they are still going to be towards the bottom next year. So TBD. But as of right now, I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being Tampa Bay as the biggest rival.
Mhm.
But Matthew Tkachuk did say, I don't know if it's really a rivalry at all. It's funny because I heard that and it's just like, part of me loves it for chirping reasons and for troll reasons, but the other part of me, as the fan in me, is like thinking, man, Matthew, I know you've been here and you've been part of the change for this franchise for the Panthers here, but man, you don't know the pain that a lot of us have been through for even outside of the playoffs for the two teams, long losing streaks in Tampa's barn, and now what's going on with the Panthers on just 3 straight road games here. I mean, there's a little part of me that's just like, Matthew, I wish you knew how a lot of us felt from years of pain.
Yeah, and I kind of spoke about that earlier today because I was on with Cats and Bolts on their live pod today, and I don't think a lot of, I guess, newer players understand exactly, fans that have been with this team since its inception, whether, or 20 years, or whatever you want to call it. They don't understand the pain and the agony, and I want to say the trigger happiness of the fans, because we know how low things can be, from um, ownership flux to relocation rumors to top players not really panning out from the draft, trading away your best players for basically nothing. I think we are just really trying to, I guess, enjoy this time right now, because it is the golden age of the Florida Panthers organization. And, if this is the attitude that the organization is going to take, or at least Kachuk's going to take, I love it for right now. But what's it going to look like in the next couple of years once they're a little bit older?
Yeah, and the Panthers are catching the Tampa Bay Lightning at a time where their depth pieces from their Stanley Cup runs got paid, and it catches up. And the Panthers, I mean, yeah, we spoke about even this season for the guys like what could happen to Sam Bennett and Aaron Ekblad, but even the guys who are on the $3 million deals like Etu Luostarinen, Evan Rodriguez, even a Nico Mikla, they're going to have to get raises soon for them. So that's going to be interesting to see for the Panthers on how they navigate things. But hey, all we got right now is the present for the Panthers here. But when it comes to I want to do more of like compare and contrast when it comes to these two Battle Floridas that both ended in 5 games. A few things that they had in common was Sam opened the series with a score in both of them. I mentioned earlier the proven scorer showed up in Jake Gensel and Steven Stamkos last year. Alexander Barkov didn't score until the final game of the series. He scored twice in Game 5 last year. And trade deadline acquisitions, impactful. Vladimir Tarasenko got a power play goal in the home part of the series early on, and then Brad Marchand, Seth Jones were as impactful. Nico Sturm, which Paul Maurice did speak about Nico Sturm on how impactful he's been, especially because you're not sending Barkov and Reinhart out for multiple shifts on the penalty kill. So that's another big part of the acquisition for him, for Nico Sturm there. And also, Matthew Tkachuk had 3 goals in both Battle of Floridas each year. More points. He had 9 total points last year, but doing it in less minutes this time around while still trying to get reacclimated back into playing time. So what do you think when you hear that, Nick?
It just shows to me that I think this series was more of a collective effort from this team. You had last year, you had all these players that were coming back that they wanted to, run it back and try to get back to the Cup final and win it. You have your Lamborghinis. I think Stenlund was not a part of that, but they brought him in to kind of cover that 4C. Cousins came back. You just have a bunch of these players that I think us as fans were emotionally tied to and just wanted to see them get the job done. Whereas this year, I think there were some unknowns. We didn't know who was going to perform and everything. But luckily, Sturm was a huge addition, in my opinion. I think he was probably, outside of Marchand and Jones, I mean, their impact, I think Sturm has just been able to solidify the bottom six and has allowed the line three to actually really flourish and won't take anything away from Marchand from that. But the one stat that two stats I absolutely love from the series. One, Nikita Kucherov had less points in this series than he did the previous series of last year. I think he only had 4 points. He had 7 last year. And he's goalless in 15 straight playoff games, and 10 of those against Florida. So They're doing something right.
Amazing. And some of the contrasts that we've seen for this one is the Panthers scored 4 goals a game in last year's Battle of Florida to 3.8, and they did it in 5, just over 4 less shots per game, 30 to 25.6. So what they've done in less open ice has been remarkable. Better on the PK, and D-men more involved. 5 goals this year, while it was 3 last year, and those were Mikkola, OEL, and Montour. Those were the goal scorers, and doing this with 9 players that were not on the team this year from last year's run. So just able to get fresh bodies in, and even though the Panthers have had a lot of miles, the guys on their team, they've been able to still get through a round. But speaking of, we're gonna turn the page from this Battle of Florida and also discuss where the betting odds actually have the Florida Panthers, and the fact that they will be meeting with the Toronto Maple Leafs for the second time in the last 3 years, and both times in the second round. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. And do you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox, turning any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV 4-stick devices? No console required. Just grab your paired controller and subscribe or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles like EA Sports College Football 25 and Call of Duty Black Ops 6 as easily as you stream your TV shows. It's gaming made simple. It's all on your TV with Wi-Fi 6E and auto low latency mode advanced technology. Fire Stick 4K delivers smoother, more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds you need to stay competitive. Play high quality Xbox game at a fraction of a cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take over or your kids your games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/FireTVLockedOn to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV 4K Max 1st and 2nd, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Second segment here on this Friday, May 2nd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, Nick, the second round is set. All of the Eastern Conference teams have gotten through. Hurricanes, Capitals on the other side of the bracket in the Metropolitan Division, Panthers, Leafs on the Atlantic side of the bracket. So, with what the Panthers have done in their past and their present, just being healthy at the right time, which has been the name of the game. Paul Maurice calculating it so well coming into this these playoffs. The Panthers are now the favorite, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, at plus 390 to repeat as Stanley Cup champions. The two teams that are right behind them, the Carolina Hurricanes and the Edmonton Oilers. It's funny because I'm not going to pretend like I check betting odds all the time, but there was a time where the Panthers were as low as third, at least getting towards the trade deadline. I know the Hurricanes traded Mikko Rantanen for Logan Stankoven, which Stankoven's worked really well with Carolina, and to think that they got him on the cheap for him. And then Edmonton with the mess that, even though they were a mess going into this, a lot of blown third period leads for the LA Kings there, and for everything with their 5 forward power play, which the Toronto Maple Leafs are a team that runs a 5 forward power play. That has been a disaster for LA, but Plus 390. Can't say that I'm surprised that they are the top betting odds to win it again after what they've proven.
So that just tells me that the experts or whomever's doing the odds doesn't really pay attention to this team. That's why ESPN, 20 of the ESPN analysts actually picked Tampa Bay to win. And I think us as Florida fans knew, like, the final 2 or 3 weeks of the season, like, they were shutting players down. They were making sure they're getting rested and they're getting healthy. And, I think they forgot about Matthew Tkachuk, honestly. I mean, I know he was kind of in the background, but, we as fans knew he was coming back game one and that it was going to be all being let loose. So the fact that they were able to do what they did at Tampa in just 5 games, I think kind of gives the betting or the people who set the odds more confidence. And, I can't think of any other teams. I mean, like, I understand that Carolina's there. They're always going to be there because they're always the season darlings. I just don't see them really doing anything after the second round if they do make it through. Edmonton is always going to be a threat just because they have McDavid. The one team that nobody is really talking about, and it's kind of scaring me a little bit, is the Vegas Golden Knights. So I wonder why they don't have higher odds than Carolina or Edmonton.
Yeah, and to think that Jack Eichel has recovered from a poor start to the series, and hey, they end up advancing. I just checked the score. They ended up winning that game against the Minnesota Wild. We're actually recording this just shortly after the Leafs Sens game went final for them, which it looked like that the Sens were going to at least send it to overtime when David Perron scored off the nameplate of Anthony Stolarz, and then Max Pacioretty, his first playoff goal in 4 years for him. Just wow, incredible for him that he was on a PTO with the Leafs, and then they were just trying to find out the financials, and then he gets the GWG for the Leafs, and how much he struggled with injuries with Montreal, Washington recently, and now sends the Leafs to the second round for the second time in the last 3 years, where they'll be facing the defending Stanley Cup champions, Florida Panthers. And it's crazy because you think about for the Leafs on their side of things, there's still so much pressure for them no matter what. It's regardless of whether they win a round up to the conference finals, it's going to be championship or bust. And it's gone back for all the way since 2018 when these guys were starting to make their pushes. They're finally 2-13 in series clinching games. And you know what's the great part, Nick, for no matter if you're looking at this as an objective fan, even if the Leafs go on a long run for this one, it's going to cap-strap their team, convincing them to pay Mitch Marner. And I think that this could actually, for them, just advancing even one round, if the Panthers do end up winning, it could convince them that they're almost there. For at least that's how I see it, because it would be easy for them to rip the Band-Aid off if they let Ottawa back in, and then you're putting so much money into forward. So maybe the Panthers may be humbling them, and maybe the Brad Treliving, who knows what could happen in the offseason for them. I know I'm getting ahead of myself there, but what do you think about just the amount of pressure that's on Toronto versus Florida coming into this one?
Well, of course. I mean, there's always pressure. It's the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's where the Hockey Hall of Fame is. It's where the hockey universe is, the mecca of hockey. So not winning the Stanley Cup or not winning a round is not acceptable to their fans. I mean, for as much pleasure as I get watching Steve Dangle on his pod because he's so passionate and everything, you got to feel for the guy. I mean, us as Panther fans have felt that same way for a long time too, but imagine going 20 years without winning a damn round. And and you're getting in the playoffs and you still can't get into out of the first round. And then you do get out of the first round. And then you have a bunch of people out in the street saying, we want Florida or we want Boston, because they said both. Let's be frank here.
Yeah.
And then they get rolled. And then next season, they don't even get out of the first round again. It's like, what is going on? I think, honestly, Toronto's already kind of made up their mind what they're probably going to do in the offseason. And if they haven't, that's a problem. I'm pretty sure Bill Zito, after the second round sweep of the Panthers, knew what exactly he was going to do. He knew what needed to change and how he was going to do it. Matthew Tkachuk just kind of dropped in his lap, to kind of help move that along a lot quicker. But maybe the Panthers will humble him. Maybe it'll be a 7-game series. But whatever Troy Living does, you do got to break up that core four and try to reinvest in other parts of the roster to be better.
Especially with how Matthew Knies has just bursted on the scene and the fact that he's going to be a cheaper option for them. That's another thing that he's on that top line, top power play unit for the Leafs as well. So you have a cheaper option for them. And then, Tavares isn't slowing down for him as well, being on, and to think that when they sign that contract, it's like, oh, that's going to look bad at the back half, but nope. Over 30 goals for him. I think he got 40. I didn't look at his exact stats, but I know it's over 30 for him. So that's another thing. Another thing that is interesting about this series for the Panthers and the Leafs is the fact that they got some former Panthers. Here's the thing. When you win a Stanley Cup, people want to be just like you. People want to steal a little bit from you. People want to get a little bit of intel of what it's like to play that style of hockey. Of course, Steven Lawrence, OEL, and Anthony Stolarz, who won the series for the Leafs, and then a Stanley Cup proven coach in Craig Berube for them. So that's another thing about just the kind of a blueprint change for the Toronto Maple Leafs coming in. And I've spoken about it during the regular season. The Toronto Maple Leafs look like a little bit of a different regular season team right now. They're putting in the habits there of playing these low event games. And the thing is, they are going through right now kind of what the Panthers went through in 2023, growing pains and close losses for them. Not saying that they are not saying that they're going to go all the way, but it's similar to kind of looking at their regular season from afar.
Yeah, it is. I think that they had the star power, right? They have Matthews, they have Nylander, who finally showed up tonight. Matthew Knies, that was a really good draft pick, and again, as you said, it's going to be a cost effective solution for them. And then you got Tavares in a contract year that's looking to get another contract. So to me, it's not surprising he put up like 37 or 38 goals. And then Mitch Marner is just going to be Mitch Marner. So I think it took a coach like Berube, kind of like Maurice came into Florida, to really take hold of that that car and really steer it in the right direction. Now, the results were not there at the beginning. Let's be honest. They made the playoffs on the last day of the season, and they went on this magnificent run after being down 3-1. Toronto doesn't have that this year. I don't feel. I don't feel like they've been tested. They lost 2 to Ottawa, but coming in to play Florida, no, it's not going to be the same. So this is going to be their reality check in a way, and they're going to have to really learn from They're going to have to learn on the fly in this series if they're going to be willing to put in the effort, the work, and also if they're even going to be able to push past, and see if they can win a cup. Because if they do beat the Panthers, I can't see a reason why they wouldn't be able to go to the cup final.
Yeah, and the thing is the second round of a playoffs a time to learn on the fly? Going back to your question, going back to your statement there. So that's going to be interesting to see whether they can, because both Florida and Ottawa, teams that are big bruisers, really, for what they bring to the table. Matthew Tkachuk's just as much of a wrecking ball as Brady for them. They both, Florida and Ottawa, have Vezina goaltenders as well. So that's another thing for both the two matchups that Toronto is facing here. But we'll discuss more of the recent playoff series for the Panthers and the Leafs here, and also the recent season series for the Panthers and the Leafs, and how the Panthers can use that as a possible blueprint to win this series. We're going to discuss them more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And the Stanley Cup playoffs are here. And if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. Thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets and even those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer. With last-minute deals, you can save up to 60%. Save up to 60% buying last minute for sports, concert, comedy, theater, and more. Their all-in pricing shows the total cost up front, no surprise fees at checkout. The app even shows panoramic seat views so you know exactly what you're going to buy. And Game Time ticket coverage, I know I'm protected, whether it's cancellation protection, job loss assurance, and their 24-hour return guarantee. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDON NHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Third and final segment here on this Friday, May 2nd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show, where the Florida Panthers will be meeting the Toronto Maple Leafs in round number 2. We still don't know at this point in time when the series will start. So chances are they might put it in a situation where you put the back and forth so that we could at least see games 3 and 4 on Hockey Night in Canada. So maybe it could be another day of playing, off day, and then at least get the Saturday part for when it shifts to sunrise for the Panthers. So yes, Panthers defeated the Maple Leafs in 5 last go round. Nick Cousins got the first and the final goal of the series. Bob was under siege in the first 2 games for the Panthers in Toronto, 35 and 37 shots against respectively. And then the Panthers really slowed it down in the home part of the series right before going back to Toronto, where Bob faced 52 shots and faced 50 of them, where Nick Cousins ended the series. And then third line of Lundell, Luostarinen, and Reinhart were a big part of the 2-0 comeback in game 2. And then no goals in the final 39 minutes of that game after Barkov scored. And then Sam Reinhart's wraparound in game 3 for them. And like we mentioned, Panthers are bruisers. Can the Toronto Maple Leafs handle that? We mentioned they got more of the blue line depth. We mentioned OEL for them. Chris Tanev is a guy who can eat pucks, get in front. But the fact that it is Morgan Riley was one of those players for the Leafs who were one of those guys who had the main growing pains. He's not on the top power play anymore for the Leafs there. And the one player that the Panthers really exposed in the series a few years ago was Jake McCabe. That was one that the Panthers really, it kind of like stole their lunch money with how much they disrupted him in the neutral zone when it came to little puck battles, and then the Panthers were able to get breakaways. But this is different when it comes to just the style of play for the Panthers. I mean, yes, the Panthers were able to win the season series this year 3-1. And here's the thing, Nick. I mean, every single time the Panthers played the Leafs and they got, at least in their wins, it was always after response from a loss for the Panthers. Every single matchup was coming off a loss, and they go 3-1 in those. The first one was after a Monday loss against Washington at home, and then it was a day after before Thanksgiving. The Panthers just were living in the offensive zone. The second one was after that heartbreaking loss in Boston, where they blew the 2-goal the third period lead for them. And then the most recent win for the Panthers was after they played their AHL squad in Detroit. But then the loss came after that heartbreaker in Montreal on the second end of a back-to-back for the Panthers. So it was really hard to judge the last part of the series for the season series for the Panthers, especially because, like we mentioned, a lot of the AHL guys were playing. So I'm judging mostly the first 2 matchups. Yeah, does it sound like a cop-out because we're talking about 2 wins? But I mean, the Panthers were at the most part had most of their guys intact. So we kind of see a little bit of how the Panthers looked. Their shots for percentage was at a 55% during the regular season. So I'm I like how it looks, but obviously playoffs are a different story. And the fact is the Leafs going into this, it's a chance for them to they see an opponent that they haven't beaten just yet. So you gotta only imagine that for the Leafs, it looks like as they said on the TNT broadcast, especially Paul Bissonnette, it's Goliath for them against the Panthers.
Sounds eerily familiar to what Florida had to deal with. What, last year, couple years ago, when they finally got rid of Tampa? Yeah, it's roughly going to be the same thing. And I think as well, you can't really take the regular season games into consideration a lot, just because it it's a different style, it's a different emotion, and it's a different way of being able to prepare. During the season, I mean, you could have 3 or 4 games during the week. You're trying to pick and choose, I guess, what's going to be more important. Not saying the players take games off or anything like that. I would never say that. But, what's more important to make sure that you're, leveling up, or that you're measuring yourself against your competition, which would be the Maple Leafs, who won the division this year? Or would you want to do it against Montreal, who barely got into the playoffs, kind of thing? So what I would take a look at is how Florida's defense and their structure was able to limit the core four last year, or 2 years ago, because I believe they basically all went scoreless. I think, except for maybe Tavares.
Nylander was the main guy who got involved for the Leafs 2 years ago. He was the main guy.
So look what they were able to do to the other three, and then also look what Florida's been able to do to Tampa Bay, to their guys. I mean, again, Kucherov hasn't scored. Point didn't look like himself. Gensel was the only one that was scoring. Again, Florida has everything down. It's just, how are they now going to translate that into this series, where it is going to be a little bit more sandpaper and it's going to be a little bit more grit? To me, it's going to be who's going to lose their cool or who's going to lose their composure first. And that'll tell me basically who has a better edge in winning the series.
Yeah, I remember during that series as well, John Tavares also struggled against the Panthers. Did get a goal at the end, if I'm not mistaken, for the Leafs, if my memory serves correctly. So that's another thing for the Panthers here, on just how it's been over and over again. I mean, throughout their playoff run last year, it was every single round they found one guy that they limited. Second round was Pasternak. Third round was Artemi Panarin. And even at times McDavid in the Cup final. So it was just once again, the difference this time for the Panthers is once again not controlling the matchups when they go into an away barn, which they'll be they won't have home ice once again. They'll be without Aaron Ekblad in game one after the suspension after that forearm to Brandon Hagel. So that's another adjustment that the Panthers will need to make for them. But going back to the shots for percentage for the Panthers, over 60% Corsi. So that's very encouraging for the Panthers on just how they continue to and how they pressure the D for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean, how they overwhelmed Anthony Stolarz in those matchups was just continuing to pepper him. And for Anthony Stolarz, as much as I like them on the Panthers, I mean, it's not really technically sound for him. I think it's more of just the fact that he has a big frame is why he's able to stop a lot of pucks for him. So I think if you just, like they did when it comes to getting to the net front, I think that's a real big key, and just continuing to overwhelm him like they did in the at least the 3 matchups that they faced, because they faced them 3 times. The last time was Joseph Wall, which the Panthers got a win in, but the first 3 times they were at least able to at least get a good amount of pressure on him.
Yeah, and the one thing too is that the Panthers know Stolarz. I mean, I know he only spent 1 year here, but they had the confidence in putting him in situations that, he literally was the best backup last year. I mean, he had the save percentage, the goals against. I mean, it just, if it wasn't for what I think it was the Boston goaltenders last year that won everything, like the Jennings Trophy and everything, If it wasn't for those two, I think Florida would have actually been able to win those. Or maybe it was Hellebuck and his backup.
It was Hellebuck and him only because he started the back and forth start more than 25.
Oh, that guy's a monster. But I just think the Panthers will get to him, and I think we'll be seeing Joseph Wall in 1 to 2 games. It just depends. I mean, if they're able to get to Stolarz early, Wall might be the guy going forward, and he's the younger guy too, and is somebody that they've been trying to, get into be the one goalie, the 1G, but his health has been terrible. So, to me, I don't question who's got the advantage. It's Florida and goaltending, especially if Bob stays healthy. If you're talking about defense, I'm probably still going to take Florida even without Ekblad. Forwards, that's where you're going to probably want to get into the matchups, and you're going to want to look at the depth to see if lines 2, 3, and 4 will match up just as well. I'm really looking at lines 3 and 4 to see who can actually get a grindy goal or actually put one in at a very, just score a timely goal.
Yeah. I'm also looking at that third pair for the Leafs here on how they match up, because Simone Benoit, I think he's one guy that probably doesn't get talked about a lot on that third pair, because there's so many superstars on the Toronto Maple Leafs on just how he's able to create offense from the blue line for them as well, and also another one of those bruisers for them, and also being paired with Stanley Cup champion Oliver Ekman-Larsson there, 2 left-handed shots for that bottom pair. So that's what I'm looking for. And hey, it didn't look like that the Scott Lawton trade looked like it was paying dividends early, because they were shifting them back to the wing. But hey, some line changes for Craig Berube there, and it's resulted in at least a series win for the Leafs here. So adjustments made by the coach have been timely for them, and you got to give credit where credit is due for the Leafs. So we won't again. We will be back sometime next week for a crossover between Locked On Panthers and Locked On Leafs to preview the series, give our series predictions for the Panthers here for this series. But I did text Jacob asking him his prediction for the series, and he texted me back saying Cats in 6. How about you, my friend? What is your prediction? Mine will be saved until next week.
I'm going to go with what I picked last round, where a team will win the series. But if I had to really choose, I think Toronto's going to get a couple, but I think Florida wins in 7.
Mm-hmm. That means Panthers getting a win in the library, that is the Scotiabank Arena. So yeah.
Hey, all 3 wins in Tampa, not a problem.
Yep, and the Panthers found a way to win 3 in Toronto 2 years ago. So this is nothing new, being in a road environment. Nothing new for them. But Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me on another edition of the show. You guys can follow him on Twitter at Prudential Zero, and you can also follow him on Instagram at Burry1096 as well. So Nick, I want to thank you so much for joining me once again, and I will see you next week.
See you next week, my friend.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.